When it comes to humanity as a whole, many of us have a strange fascination with mixing humans with other creatures. This has happened with literally everything and anything on this planet that has a pulse, from insects to aquatic creatures, and to our main subject of today's video, birds. These type of demi-humans are usually referred to as avians or birdfolk, which are humanoid birds that appear in many different settings and stories, Skylanders being one of them. From what I understand, the main criteria you have to hit is that you need to be humanoid with some bird features, like wings, feathers, and beaks if you feel like it. But what surprises me the most about the bird people in Skylands is how little of them there actually are in the Skylanders group. From what I've researched, there's only 10 bird folk that are part of the Skylanders, while the rest of them are either reposes, variants, or villains. But even still, that's a large amount of Skylanders to go on and talk about, which is exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to talk about the many avians within the Skylanders organization. So without any more stalling, let's hop straight into it. When it comes to avian Skylanders, Jetvac probably was the first one to come to mind for many of you. Out of all the Skylanders, he is one of the franchise's poster children, being seen on multiple different advertisements and products throughout the character's history. So with that out the way, let's actually take a look at his lore and see if it's up to par. When Jetvac was young, he was given a pair of magical wings as it was a long-standing tradition for all Skybarons. In moments after he received them, he would show off his mastery of flight for all to see, becoming one of the greatest Skybarons in all of Windham as he grew older. He would go on to defend his home from anyone who would dare to harm it, along with his fellow barons. But one day, Windham would be caught up in a raid by an unknown force to my knowledge. During the defense of his home, Jetvac would spot a young mother struggling to get her children out of harm's way, and horrified by what would happen if they didn't, he would selflessly give his pair of wings to the mother, allowing her and her children to escape. His actions would not only catch the attention of Eon, who would make him a Skylander, but he would also give him a vacuum-powered jetpack that would serve as a substitute for his wings, and he would play a large role in not only Rift into Overdrive and Spyro vs. the Mega Monsters, but he would also make an appearance in Imaginators as an unplayable character. Now, when it comes to his backstory, I feel like it's pretty lackluster in my opinion. Not because it's bad or anything, but because it's just really vague about a lot of parts. It never really states who's raiding Windham or even why they're being raided in the first place. Do they have some sort of resource that these raiders want, or what's the deal? It may be the wings that Jetpack used to have, but speaking of those, I know a lot of you guys are wondering why he doesn't get a second pair, and I think I know why. It said in the story that the Skybarons would usually get their wings when they're young, and that implies to me at least that the wings grow with them through age. Maybe he couldn't get another pair of wings because it would just be too small for him, and even if it did grow with him through age, it would take a long time for him to even get off the ground. It may also be a cultural thing as well. It does say that it was tradition for the Skybarons, so maybe losing them is something to be frowned upon, and it might be a reason why Jetvac even became a Skylander in the first place. He probably just couldn't do his duties as a Skybaron anymore. But to be completely honest with you, this is just speculation, and I could easily be wrong about this. But with that out the way, let's take a look at the next Skylander.
Whip up a storm.
Free Ranger is a SWAT force member of the Air Element, and surprisingly, he's been on my radar for a hot minute, ever since the first video in fact, and the only reason I didn't include him there is because I didn't have a figure of him. But since we're talking about birds in this video, I thought it would be a perfect time to include him. But without any more stalling, let's get straight into it. When Free Ranger was still an egg, a bolt of lightning would strike him during a storm, and he would hatch from it moments later with a thunderbolt at the top of his head, and from there, he would be fascinated by storms. He was so fascinated by them, in fact, that he would actively become one of the greatest storm chasers in all of Skylands. But not in the traditional sense. Instead of watching the storms from a relatively safe spot, he was known to jump into the center of them, sometimes spiraling within tornadoes and riding on lightning. One day, however, he would stumble across a storm unlike any other, and as his bio describes it, it was unnatural and ominous, billowing with evil and leaving only desolation in its wake. Now, you would think that this would be one of those rare storms that he wouldn't jump to. But no, he was standing on the edge of a cliff, literally about to jump to his death before Eon rushed over to stop him. Eon would go on to explain that what the two were looking at was the darkness itself, and he would tell the Storm Chicken, yes that's his race according to the wiki, that if he was up to the challenge of facing it, that he should join the Skylanders, and Free Ranger would accept the challenge without a second of hesitation, becoming a member of the SWAT Force. Now, the biggest thing that I want to talk about is the Dark Storm, because the way that it's described makes me think that it wasn't just a natural occurrence, but it was actually created by someone, and I think that someone was Cassandra. We have to remember that all of this takes place 100 years before the main games, because that's how long it's been since the last eruption. This makes me think that Eon and Free Ranger just accidentally stumbled upon whatever plot she had and they just dealt with it then and there, which might be the reason why her next plot would involve Spyro's father. It's probably just Cassandra learning from her mistakes, unlike her son. But once again, this is all just speculation, as it isn't officially said if this was the case. Going back to Free Ranger for a moment, I was actually caught off guard that he was a Storm Chicken. Many of us probably thought he was an eagle of some sort, and what we were actually looking at was a chicken. I'd also like to point out how downright insane he is for thinking he can jump into a storm made of pure darkness, and if I'm correct, the bio describing the storm was his observation of all of that too, which makes it even crazier. But with that out the way, I think it's about time that we get on to the last Skylander of today.
Let's ruffle some feathers.
When it comes to the SWAT Force, Hootloop is considered to be one of the worst members of its team, as he wasn't really sought out, and even though his teleportation is pretty cool, it's kind of just lacking compared to the rest of the SWAT Force. So let's take a look at his history and see if it holds up. Hootloop was raised by a guild of magicians in one of the most famous traveling circuses in all of Skylands, and at a young age, he perfected illusions and spells that only the best of their guild could perform. He was so good at magic, in fact, that he was able to learn and master the art of teleportation, and soon enough, he would become a star of the show, his name spreading far and wide across Skylands. One day, however, an army of Greevils disguised as clouds invaded the circus with the intention of destroying it, but Hooploop would instead give a performance of a lifetime. Using his powers, he would fight off the Greevils and save the circus almost flawlessly, getting a standing ovation from all of the spectators, one of them being Eon. Eon would present Hootloop with the opportunity to become a Skylander and learn real magic, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean, and Hooploop would accept his deal, becoming a member of the SWAT Force. Now, the thing that surprised me the most about the story is that the Greebles were involved, especially when you know about the little lore that they actually have. According to the story scroll in SWAT Force, the Greebles can actually be ordered on the Minions monthly catalog for a cheap price. Is this contract worker slavery? I don't exactly know, but what this implies to me is that the Greebles that attacked the circus were actually hired by someone to do it, which makes me question what actually is going on with the circus. Why would a villain go out of their way to attack a circus? What did the circus do to them? Were they involved with this villain, or did something more happen? And even though I don't want to bring her up, Cassandra is the only villain that we know of that was active during that time, so she might be involved as well. But for now, we're just gonna have to leave this as a cold case as we have ran out of time. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so I can grow as a channel, leave some comments down below to make the algorithm happy, and I will see you all in the next one.